All right, good evening, everyone. I want to do a quick test. This is my first time streaming live on YouTube, so I just want to make sure that you guys can actually see my screen and hear me. All right, perfect. What a crazy session today. Just want to wait, give it a couple of minutes, see if more people come in, and then we'll get started. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about. This was an absolutely wild session. I have some notes for you guys, and we'll talk about what has happened so far this week, the trades that we've taken, and then we'll also go into looking forward. Talk about the trades that we could take potentially tomorrow, or what's going to happen with the market. Right, we have a lot of economic data coming out. There's a lot of earnings coming out at the end of the month and early May. So we'll talk about all that in this session, and we'll get started shortly. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to make sure again that you guys can see. Can you see the trading view, the trading view screen? Okay, perfect. So I wrote some notes on this on my trading view screen. This is the SPY chart from today. Absolutely nuts, right? But the thing that you guys have to remember is to not give in to FOMO, right? We didn't know that this news was going to come out. We actually caught some really nice trades today. So if we go over to the Discord, right, you guys can see that Rav took Microsoft. It was a beautiful trade. I think he got over 40% on that trade. And Brett and I traded SPY, right? So I got the SPY 510 calls and Brett got the SPY 510 calls. And we both made over 40% on that trade. So Rav had a 40% trade. Brett and I had a 40% plus trade, right? So there were a lot of green trades today. So even though we missed that big rally, that's okay, right? It's okay because we couldn't have predicted that news. So you can't give in to the FOMO. The only thing that you can do is focus on your next trade, okay? So focus on your next trade. There's no sense in thinking what you could have made. I know a lot of people like to look at the contract chart, the options chart, and see, oh, the contract did 3,000%. But there's no sense in doing that because it's hindsight. There's no way that you could have known that in this exact moment today that Trump was going to pause the tariffs. Okay, so absolutely crazy reversal. If you guys started dollar cost averaging into your long-term positions, you guys all should be up really nicely today. It's one of the biggest days that I have personally seen, and I've been trading for a very long time. And I think this is one of the top 5 biggest days of all time. I think it was close to a record day. Really, really crazy intraday reversal, right? SPY low of day 493. Yesterday we were trading in the lower 490s, and today now we're back at 546 on the market. Okay, absolutely crazy. So I hope that you guys were at least able to get some starters on your long-term positions and start dollar cost averaging into those, right? Because a lot of these tech names are up, and we'll see if the market holds. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about levels that need to break in order for us to hold. But right now, the market is very news driven. Okay, so it really depends what happens with these tariffs and what the plan is going forward for the market, because it's completely news driven. Levels are getting broken all day, no problem, whether it's the upside or downside. It's been very, very volatile over the past couple of weeks. All right. So let's just go ahead and start by looking at some of the things that are coming out, and then we'll go over the charts. All right. So let's start here. Can you guys see investing.com? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this is investing.com. And as you guys will notice, major data is coming out tomorrow. CPI, jobless claims. All right, this is huge data. As of right now, it looks like they're expecting a drop in inflation for the month of March, year over year. All right, so the previous was 2.8, they're forecasting 2.5. Let's see how the market reacts to that in the morning, whether it's high or low happen, but let's see how we react in the morning. And then Friday, we have PPI. We have PPI, core PPI, and PPI for the month over month, right? And we also have some inflation data at 10 o'clock and consumer data, consumer sentiment at 10 o'clock. So quite a bit is happening between tomorrow and Friday as far as data goes. Does that mean that the market will continue going up? Maybe, right? If it's good data and the market reacts to it, maybe the market continues going up. Maybe we see a reversal. I don't know. It's very news driven and very volatile. So it's important right now to just focus on buying that long term equity on these big dips, but also focusing on day trades, right? Because we've been just nailing these day trades. Okay. So those are the two big economic data points coming out tomorrow and Friday: CPI and PPI. Let's see how we react to those. All right. We also have some earnings. Not very much going on this week, but we do have some bank earnings coming out Friday morning, right? So that'll give us a good idea as to what the banks are predicting, or what they're forecasting or guiding, with all the interest rate decisions and everything like that. Okay, so that's Friday morning, and then we have a lot of economic data coming out at the end of April and early May. So look at how many companies are reporting towards the end of this month and early May, right? Microsoft, Meta, Tesla is on April 22nd. Apple is on May 1st. Netflix is on April 17th. Okay. United Airlines. There's a ton of companies that are reporting: Tesla, Meta, Apple, AMD, Netflix, SoFi, right? You can see the big list over here. Microsoft is scheduled now for April 30th. So towards the end of this month, expect more volatility, right? So we may get, somewhat of a move in the market between now and then. But when these earnings start coming out and the companies tell us how much they're going to be impacted by tariffs, we may see even bigger moves in the market. All right, because that'll give us an actual idea of what these companies are guiding, for the rest of the year and for 2026 as these tariffs go into place, right? So that's what we're looking at as far as economic data and earnings for the rest of April and early May. Okay, now let's get into the charts. Anyone have any questions about any of that so far? And this is my first time going live, so just bear with me. All right, perfect. Straightforward. Cool. All right, so let's let's jump into the charts. I'm going to delete this. You guys can take a picture if you want, but these are just the notes that I wanted to show you guys. A lot of people have FOMO when there's a big day in the market, whether it's the upside or downside. People get this crazy FOMO because they see the option contracts and they went up 4,000%, and you think, oh damn, I could have turned 1,000 into 1,000,000. Don't do that. Don't put yourself in that mindset. Otherwise, you'll start taking random gambles and giving back money, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so just focus on what we can do, and that's not predicting but executing based on actual levels and following our game plan on a daily basis. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this, and then we can look at our levels. All right, so let's look at the market levels first for SPY. Okay, first of all, look at this massive daily candle on SPY. This is a complete bullish engulfing. Now, normally I would say, okay, it's a bullish engulfing. The next day should be bullish. I don't know. This is a crazy market right now. Maybe the next day is bullish. Maybe it's not. It all depends kind of on CPI and what happens overnight with China. So I want to see how China responds. So Trump put a pause on tariffs, but he didn't. He actually increased the tariffs for China. So I want to see how China responds overnight. We'll get some of that reaction in the morning. And then we also have CPI coming out at 8:30 a.m. Okay, so we could have a potentially big swing I'm not exactly sure. We could open at 5:30. We could open at 5:60. I don't know. Let's see what happens in the morning. Okay. There's no sense in predicting, but we can look at our levels. Okay. So big levels on SPY for the upside. Oops. For the upside, we have 550. Okay. Obvious. This was the prior to low where the market bounced. Okay. So the market bounced on March 13th from 550 back to 577. Okay. So that was a pretty big pivot. If we can reclaim 550, I do have a small level at 555. There were a lot of reactions there. If you guys remember, this was a pivot back from August. And then we actually traded off this level multiple times intraday off that 555. So if we do break 555, the next level I have is 565. This was a huge level back from July, summer of last year, that the market struggled to get over. But then once we did break over, that was the obvious transition for the market to go higher, right? So those are my levels to the upside. 550. If we can break over 550, that's basically where we closed today. Then we can see 555. We break that 555. We'll go to 565. Okay. To the downside, we have 540. This was an obvious pivot, huge from September, right? Really, really big level, 540. And then we have 525. This was our high back from last April, so a year ago, that 524, 525 area. That's also where the market gapped down last week, right? So we gapped down at 525, and yesterday we failed 525. So if you zoom in, we look at the hourly chart, that's a very clear level, that 525. So maybe we open at 540, we could actually take a bounce off that 525, okay? Again, it really depends what happens overnight with the tariffs and with CPI. But maybe 525 is an option for us to take a bounce tomorrow, right? That's a really big level. That was our gap fill level, right? And it's just been a really big pivot. It was a big pivot last year as well, around the same time. So 525 is big. And then below that, we have 510. This was our big pivot from August. Remember when the carry trade was selling off, right? So 510 was the big pivot. 500, I mean, that's just a psychological whole number. But below that is 480. So 480 was our previous all-time high before our bear market in 2022, right? So 480 is what we bounced off of so far. And we're holding that. So if you look at the weekly, we have this massive weekly candle now off of 480. So, if you're a bull, this looks good. If you're a bull, we bounced off of that previous all-time high. It looks really strong, and we could potentially go back to all-time highs from here. That's not a guarantee, but if I'm a bull, this looks good. Everything is dependent on news. It's dependent on tariffs and how China responds. Again, what the Fed does with interest rates. There's a lot of factors and variables that can influence the market now, but just pure technicals, right? If we're looking at this bounce off of that previous all-time high, this is bullish, right? Now we'll see how the week actually closes, because this weekly candle hasn't closed yet. It's only Wednesday, right? So if this, let's say by Friday, has given back all of this gain and we're back at 510, that's not really a bullish weekly candle close. But if this candle closes strong, this weekly candle closes strong, then potentially we could go back to all-time high. There's potentially a lot more upside if this week closes strong, okay? There's obviously a lot of buyers coming in at these levels, at that 480, okay? So that's SPY. Sorry, any questions about that? Yeah, it's a crazy candle. Yeah, crazy daily candle, crazy weekly candle. We'll see how we actually close. Thursday, Friday. There's a lot of data coming out. Obviously, news. If there's more news, then we could see a sell off, or we could see crazy continuation. All right. So let's go back to TradingView. Now, that was SPY. Let's look at the Qs. So for Qs, we actually closed right at supply on the Qs. So 466 is my level. That was that pivot for March 13th. Again, the same area when SPY bounced, the Qs bounced, all right? And we closed right at that level today. So if the Qs can hold 466, then we go we go back to 480. Sorry, excuse me, guys. Then we go back to 480, okay? That's the next level I have on the Qs if 466 holds. All right. 450 is also a huge level. That was that pivot from September. All right. And if we can, maybe we'll get a bounce off 450 tomorrow. I'm not sure. But if we get that 450, I like that area for longs tomorrow, as long as we don't gap down like crazy. All right. For upside, so 466, 480. For downside, 450, 425. That was that, again, the same area where SPY bounced on August 5th. That was a huge level. And then 400 was our level, our previous all-time high level. So 400, 405 area was huge on the Qs. Again, same chart as SPY, right? If we hold this right now, the weekly candle is a bullish engulfing on Qs. So if you're a bull, you're looking at this and saying, all right, we just bounced off of 2021 previous all-time high. We have a weekly bullish engulfing. This is beautiful, right? This to me says more upside. However, like I said, first of all, the weekly candle hasn't closed. Okay. If we start selling Thursday and Friday, and this is just a big wick, right? And we close the week down here at like 430 or something, then that's not as bullish, right? But if this weekly candle holds, right? If we close strong on Friday, then this could see more upside, in my opinion, from a technical standpoint. Okay. But again, the market is very news driven right now. So we don't know. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with tariffs, but it's possible that we go back to all-time highs. If tariffs are lifted, we could go back to all-time highs. Okay. So that's the market, right? That's QQQ and SPY. Now there's a couple of individual names that I'm watching. Apple for one. This 200 level. 200 was our massive resistance from 2023. When Apple broke above 200, it made a high of 260, all right? And it actually bounced off of 200 once it finally cleared out that level from 2023. So today, Apple closed right near that 200 level. 200 is big for Apple, right? If Apple can reclaim 200, then we're going back to this previous low from March 13th. We're going back to 208. Right, that's an $8 move. If Apple can break 200 tomorrow, I'll be looking for longs. Right, that's a really clean level for Apple. There's a couple of other names I'm watching. Let me see if I can find them real quick. Meta 600. That's kind of an obvious level. This was a huge, huge level back in Q4 of 2024. That 600 level. So if Meta can reclaim 600, I think we have room back into 635 area, 630, 635, right? That's a nice level for Meta. See, Netflix 950. 950 is a clean level. If Netflix can break back above 950, then we can go to 970 or even 1,000, right? Netflix isn't even impacted by tariffs. So that's a nice bullish engulfing. If Netflix breaks over 950, we can look for longs. NVIDIA, actually, I don't really have anything on NVIDIA quite yet. It's just in this channel, right? So NVIDIA has this big daily channel, and you can see it's been kind of tapping off of this channel, up and down, up and down, up and down, right? Do we break it tomorrow? Maybe, okay? 115 I do have as a level, and then 120. So maybe if NVIDIA can break 115, we could look for longs as it breaks out of this channel. But that, again, depends on the market. And then the last one I was looking at is Tesla. So 215, I actually wanted for shorts today, but the market bounced, right? The market was strong. 215 is a big level moving forward. If we break below that, then I think Tesla is good for shorts. But at this point for longs, I really want Tesla to get back above 300. If I'm going to long Tesla, because this is that huge daily level, right? We've had two massive pivots off of 300, and right there again. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3 off of that 300 level. For me to get bullish on Tesla again, we have to break back above 300 because it's just been kind of dancing in between, 280 and 215, 220, right? It's just been dancing in this zone. It has the 200 SMA right here around 292. So if it can break back above 300, then it'll probably go to this level at 325, right? So, but that's the only way I'm touching Tesla right now. I would want to see a bit of confirmation, a bit of a bullish trend starting, and clear back above that daily macro level of 300. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm watching the rest of the week. Okay, again, like I said, it's totally dependent on what happens overnight and with CPI. But tomorrow, moving forward, if SPY can break above 555, we do have more upside. And then 525 is a good bounce area that I like. Okay. Apple, I want the 200 to reclaim. That 200 is a big, big daily level. Apple can break back above 200. We can make an $8 move or even $10 move, 208 to 210 area. Okay. All right. So those are my main watches. Does anyone have any questions about that? Trading during this administration is more difficult than normal. No, actually, we've been killing it. We've been killing it intraday. Obviously, long-term portfolio has taken a bit of a hit. Today, I almost went back green on my long-term from all-time highs. But no, as far as intraday, we've been absolutely nailing it. I haven't taken a loss yet this month. My last loss was March 25th, right? So it's been it's been 2 weeks since I've taken a loss, and that's for all three of us who have been doing live trading, Rav, Brett, and me. We've just been killing it. Yeah, I'm in some leaps. XYZ is a name that I like a lot. So I mentioned on my story, I think a couple of days ago, to just start dollar cost averaging again. No one can predict the bottom. I said that in the chat too, right? I said no one can predict the bottom. You just have to start buying good companies. And if it goes 10% lower, buy more. Okay. So none of us can predict the bottom, right? I don't know if this was the bottom. It may not be the bottom. It's possible SPY goes lower. But you don't want to miss out. That's the problem. If SPY goes back to all-time highs, you'll feel like you missed an entire move, right? So that's what happened with a lot of people in 2022 during COVID, right? Anytime there's a big crash, people feel they miss out. And that's not a good feeling. So it's better to just get some exposure on companies that you like and hold. Now, I wouldn't recommend buying now because the market had a crazy day today. I don't buy on these big green days. I buy on red days. So the days that you want to buy, even Thursday, April 3rd, that's a good day to buy. Friday, April 4th, yesterday, Monday. These are all good days to buy because the market was down and the market was selling. So individual names are selling. Okay. But if you go to buy something like United, you'll have a way worse average than me because I just bought this on Friday at $55 a share and now it's at $70 a share, right? XYZ, XYZ, excuse me. I had to wrap this up quickly. XYZ, I think, is $100 plus stock. All right. I've done a ton of research on this company. They make so much money and they have a ton of potential. All right. It's trading at really low valuation, near 2023 lows, near COVID lows. All right. This is one name that, even though it did have a strong day today, I think you can still get in, right, at 55 because I think this is $100 plus stock. All right. Now, there are some other names that you could buy that are still low, right? A lot of these names are still way lower than they were at all-time highs. But it's not my recommendation to buy after the market had a 10.5% green day because we'll probably see a pullback. All right. So wait for a pullback and then buy on some of these individual names. Right. Same with NVIDIA. This was trading at 87. Now it's at 114. Don't buy it at 114. Wait for a red day to buy it. That's just a piece of advice from me. Okay. But yeah, just dollar cost average for long terms. Find good companies. Disney, Disney at $80 a share. That was an obvious one. Yeah, there's a lot of good companies out there. Just buy them when they've had a nice correction, and when the company is down NVIDIA was down almost 40%, I think, right? Let's see. NVIDIA is a powerhouse and it was down 43%. That's such an obvious buy, right? It's such an obvious buy when a name like NVIDIA is down 43%. Okay. Even the market, anytime the market's down 15 or 20%, I'm loading the boat and I'm executing, right? I'm getting exposure. If we drop another 10%, I'll add in my position, drop another 10%, I'll complete my position, right? Because if SPY drops 40%, it'll 100% go back to all-time highs, right? Because that's how the market works. No matter what, if you buy at minus 20% or you buy at minus 50%, the market will go back to all-time highs. So it just depends how long you can endure a drawdown, right? And how soon you'll need that liquidation, that money. So if you guys can hold, if you're buying into these companies for a long term, just buy and hold. As soon as you think it's a good valuation based on fundamentals or even technicals, right? If we're looking at Apple and you see, okay, it's at 170, it was last trading here a year ago, okay, that's probably a good buy. It's at 170. It was at, it traded at 260 and now it's at 170. That's a $90 discount from highs. Sure, let me grab some Apple, right? That's the way you have to think about it. Don't think, oh, I need to nail the bottom or I'll be red for a few months or a year. No, as long as you don't need the money right away, when any of these companies or the market is down, just start buying in, right? Otherwise, you'll regret it. You'll regret it when the market snaps and does these crazy, 10% days, all right? Or it goes back to all-time highs, because that happened recently. August, COVID, 2022, right? 2022 is about a year of a drawdown, but then we went back to all-time highs in 2024, right? So, max pain generally is 1 to 2 years. And then after that, the market goes back to all-time highs, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and I'll continue doing these on Wednesdays. So Wednesday afternoons, we'll do a little recap, look at the market, the trades that we've taken, the trades that we're looking to take, go over the economic calendar, investing.com, all of the data that can potentially affect the market, and just talk about things that can potentially impact us, things that can help you guys. We'll go over everything. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll catch you in the morning. Thanks for joining, guys.